Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into the gentle, slightly musty folds of daily life in Edo-period Japan. You won't be fighting battles or wielding swords tonight. No, tonight you're just a low-ranking samurai, and your day begins with a thrillingly mundane ritual. Laundry. The sun hasn't even properly cleared the rooftops yet, and already the alley outside is murmuring with the soft scuff of wooden sandals, morning market chatter, and the faintest jingle of bells on a distant palanquin. The tatami beneath your sleeping mat is just as unforgiving as it was last night. You groan softly, pushing yourself upright while scratching at the back of your neck. The air is heavy with the earthy aroma of damp rice straw and that ever-present scent of pickled daikon from next door. Mrs. Watanabe seems to ferment half her family's weight in that stuff daily. You blink your way into wakefulness, poking your head through the bamboo screen to see your tiny courtyard already dappled in uneven sun. A neighbor's carp flag flutters lazily above the tiled roofs. Somewhere, a rooster gives a half-hearted crow, as if even it can't quite be bothered today. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. I love seeing how far this sleepy little corner of the internet reaches. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your eyes drift across the courtyard, landing on the folded heap waiting for you like a challenge issued by fate itself. 3 soiled hakama, 2 faded juban underrobes, and a ceremonial kimono that smells faintly of last month's incense, and not in a good way. You probably won't survive this if you forget to separate the whites from the indigo-dyed garments. You stretch slowly, bones popping like fireworks at the Spring Lantern Festival, and roll up your sleeves. You're not a warrior today, you're a washer of sleeves, a folder of dignity. Outside, the alley is already alive. A vendor selling pickled radish sings his pitch in a warbling tenor. 2 sparrows chirp a heated debate over a fallen rice grain. Your neighbor's daughter giggles while trying to sneak her family's bedding onto the shared clothesline before anyone else nabs the sunny spot. You shuffle toward the wooden basin where you'll begin your laundry quest. First, you light a cone of pine incense, not for spiritual reasons, but because the mosquitoes in this part of Edo are approximately the size of origami cranes with a vendetta. Historians still argue whether samurai of your rank were technically supposed to do their own washing or delegate it to household staff. But your stipend barely covers your rice allowance, let alone a maid. So here you are, sleeves up, basin filled, and a suspiciously yellow juban in hand. You glance across the street, where an elderly ronin is already scrubbing his own robes with the bitter focus of someone trying to erase his regrets. He nods at you. You nod back. It's a silent brotherhood built on water stains and fabric softening secrets. You begin the morning ritual, soaking, squeezing, and whispering small curses when your sandal slips on the wet stone. The robes are heavier than they look, and one misstep could mean a faceful of heritage dye. Your ceremonial sash, the long, heavy obi, is coiled like a sleepy dragon near the pile. You'll deal with that beast later. For now, your focus is the underrobe, the soft cotton layer worn beneath the stiffer outer garments. It smells faintly of sandalwood and shame. With each squeeze and splash, you fall into a rhythm. It's not glamorous, it's not noble, but it's oddly meditative. Somewhere between wringing out the sleeves and rescuing a stray hairpin from the water, you begin to lose track of time. Your neighbor's cat saunters over and watches you from a safe, dry distance. You try not to take its judgment personally. You pause to stretch your back and watch the sky. A lone kite drifts above the rooftops, likely a child's, though it wouldn't surprise you if it belonged to that one poetic monk who sends scrolls on the wind. A thought creeps in. You could be patrolling the city walls or studying military tactics. Instead, you're calculating how many more rinses it'll take before the kimono stops smelling like regret. But here's the thing, they don't teach this in sword school. They don't tell you that keeping your gear spotless is its own form of discipline. That folding a sash with precision reflects your state of mind. That if you misplace your sleeves, you misplace your honor. Laundry, you realize, is just another battle. Quieter, wetter, slightly soapier. And as the sun rises just a little higher, warming the edge of your courtyard and casting shadows that gently stretch toward your feet, you accept your mission. You are samurai, you are scrubber, you are starch whisperer. The heap is staring at you now. Damp cotton, wrinkled silk, faint rust-colored stains from some ill-timed tea sloshing incident. It's all there, waiting. You square your shoulders, pick up the first jubin, and sigh. Time to face the cloth. You kneel by your laundry basin with the solemnity of a priest at altar. Except instead of incense and offerings, you've got gray water and half a cake of pine ash soap. Its texture is closer to river stone than anything remotely sudsy. But hey, it's the Edo period. If you wanted luxury, you should have been born into a merchant family. You dunk the garment and begin scrubbing it against the ridged washboard. The wood sings with every pass, scrap, rinse, scrap, like a soothing mantra. You've heard that in Kyoto, the nobility have servants who wash their robes in perfumed water while humming courtly songs. You, meanwhile, hum an off-key version of the fishmonger's jingle because it's stuck in your head. The fabric fights back. Cotton fibers cling to grime like stubborn ancestors. But you've done this before, and there's a kind of unspoken knowledge passed down through scrubbing hands. How to loosen dried sweat with the heel of your palm, how to twist the cloth just so to avoid fraying the seams. Did you know some samurai families had unique ways of tying their underrobes that identified their house, just like a family crest? Historians still argue whether these styles were fashion, function, or just another excuse to one-up rival clans. You set the clean piece aside and begin the second. This one's a bit more fragrant, too many hours worn under full armor during last week's shrine patrol. A faint whiff of lacquered bamboo and panic sweat clings to the weave. You wince. You really should have washed this sooner. A splash from the neighboring yard interrupts your rhythm. The girl next door has knocked over her basin. She looks up, sheepish, and offers a tiny bow. You return the gesture with exaggerated formality as if you're settling a duel. She giggles. Behind you, your obi, your long, ceremonial sword sash, lies like a snake across the wooden platform waiting its turn. Folding it properly will take half an hour and 3 silent prayers. The last time you rushed, your sensei noticed the misalignment during temple visitation and offered nothing but a pointed stare. That stare haunted your dreams for a week. You rub your knuckles, already sore. This isn't just laundry, it's resistance training. How did samurai women do this daily, often for an entire household? And with children screaming and chickens pecking at their hems, you're barely keeping it together and you don't even have poultry interference. You lift a third robe, heavier than it looks. Deep indigo with subtle embroidery along the hem. It's your special occasions piece. The one you wear when the magistrate hosts lantern viewing parties or when your uncle's ghost anniversary rolls around. The hem has picked up dust from last week's cemetery visit. You recall kneeling too long on the gravel path, waiting for your older cousin to remember the incense sticks. You'd almost nodded off next to the ancestral tablet. You scrub with care. This one has emotional mileage, and also very fragile seams. One wrong move and your aunt will notice and spend 3 weeks sending passive-aggressive rice balls your way, always undercooked on purpose. You wring it out gently, hands aching. The water runs murky, then clearer. You line it up with the others on your drying mat, spacing them precisely to catch the best morning light. Timing the sun's angle feels like an arcane art. There's a golden window of 45 minutes between peak warmth and the neighborhood sparrows deciding your clean robes are their new bathroom. You sit back on your heels. Steam rises faintly from the cloth. The courtyard smells of damp cotton, sandalwood, and triumph. For a moment you feel like a monk, having wrung not just water but ego out of these layers. Then your left foot falls asleep. You groan, flop backward, and stare at the sky. The clouds are doing that slow Edo-era waltz, fluffy, aimless, possibly judging your laundry form. Somewhere a street performer starts playing the shakuhachi flute. The melody wafts through the neighborhood, haunting and hollow, like a memory made of wind. You exhale. You'd almost forgotten how peaceful things get once you surrender to the monotony. There's one last underrobe left. This one's an heirloom, faded patched, but stitched with your father's kanji on the inside hem. You don't wear it much, just on winter days or when you need a little ancestral encouragement. You cradle it as you lower it into the basin. The water ripples like a mirror, distorting your face into a sleepy ghost. Scrub, rinse, repeat. And in this rhythmic, quiet labor, you forget the pressure to impress the local magistrate. You forget the rice tax calculations you've been putting off. You even forget that your sparring partner still owes you 5 sen and a new drawstring pouch. Laundry, you realize again, isn't just hygiene. It's a portal. A way to fold the past, rinse the present, and hang your worries in the sun until they fade. You hang the last robe with a soft grunt, and wipe your brow with a sleeve that's only mildly cleaner than your forehead. One pile down, sword sashes await, but that mercifully comes after a rice break. The sun has climbed just high enough to cast your courtyard in a soft, forgiving glow. It's that sweet spot in the day, past the morning chill but not yet hot enough to make your robes cling like desperate ghosts. You look down at your hands, wrinkled and raw, fingers tinged with blue from indigo dye. That's not going to wash off until next week. Maybe longer if you accidentally use your cousin's fish soap again. Still, the worst is behind you, unless, of course, you count the monstrous task currently uncoiling before your feet. The long, heavy sword sash, or obi, stares up at you with quiet menace. It stretches more than 12 feet end to end, a tapestry of rank, tradition, and, frankly, frustration. You pick it up with the reverence of someone handling an ancient scroll or a very fussy cat. The cloth is thick and stiff, with a brocaded pattern that's slightly frayed on one end, likely from that unfortunate run-in with the bamboo fence last autumn. Before you can even consider folding, the sash must be cleaned. But unlike the underrobes, you can't just dunk this thing in water and flail around. No, this is delicate business. Obi are like the memoirs of a samurai's life, stitched with honor, saturated with sweat, and prone to sulking if disrespected. You lay it flat across the wooden planks, carefully aligning the edges. First, the dry brush. You sweep away dust and phantom lint with a horsehair brush so soft it might have come from a unicorn. It makes a gentle shush-shush sound, like it's trying to soothe both of you. Then, using a slightly damp cloth, you begin blotting the surface inch by inch. You work slowly, methodically, dabbing at every suspicious speck with the patience of a monk and the suspicion of a temple cat. And while you're at it, you remember something from your grandfather's stories. How certain clans developed unique obi folding rituals meant to mimic the movement of falling cherry blossoms or coiling dragons. Historians still argue whether these flourishes were purely aesthetic or if they secretly conveyed messages between clans. You pause to squint at your own sash. It doesn't resemble a dragon, more like a confused eel. You reach for the folding mat, a long strip of bamboo slats used to help keep the edges symmetrical during the rolling phase. Laying the sash atop the mat, you begin folding it over itself, smoothing each crease as if petting a skittish dog. There's an internal rhythm to it. Fold, flatten, breathe. Fold, flatten, breathe. Every few folds, you mutter under your breath the old sayings. Honor lies in even folds. Crease the cloth, not the conscience. May your robe sit smoother than your debts. That last one was probably invented by your uncle after too many cups of plum wine. You reach the final stretch and realize you've misaligned the midpoint. The left side dips slightly lower than the right. A normal person wouldn't notice, but you would. And more importantly, so would your aunt during temple festival week. With a deep sigh, you start over. Fold, flatten, breathe. This time you get it right. The final result sits before you, a perfectly rectangular, respectfully obedient sash that practically hums with samurai dignity. You tie a light twine around the middle to hold the shape while drying and gently set it atop a raised platform in the sun. No direct contact with the floor. That would be uncivilized. Also, there's a spider down there who clearly pays no rent and yet insists on sharing your living space. You sit back, stretch, and groan as your knees pop. You've spent the last hour and a half folding cloth with the kind of seriousness usually reserved for peace treaties or kabuki opening nights. A tiny sparrow lands on the corner of the platform, hops once toward the sash, and then changes its mind. Perhaps even it can sense that this sash is not to be trifled with. In the stillness that follows, you listen to the sounds of the neighborhood. The bamboo wind chimes next door, a child arguing with her grandmother about whose turn it is to sweep, and the distant clack-clack of geta sandals moving across stone. You think about all the times you've watched your elders fold their sashes with similar care, usually while offering unsolicited advice about posture. A crooked obi, your father once said, leads to a crooked life. Of course, he also believed pickled plum juice cured heartbreak. Still, there's a truth there. In this age of ink scrolls and swordplay, of rigid hierarchy and whispered poetry, even the simplest act, folding a sash, becomes a mirror of your values. You look again at your handiwork. It's not just cloth. It's heritage, it's a performance, and it's ready for the clothesline. You stand, stretch, and carry the folded sash to a special drying rack, a narrow wooden frame reserved for formal garments. You hang it gently, ensuring equal weight on both ends, and step back. The sash sways slightly in the breeze, proud and proper, like a flag of quiet domestic victory. You smile. And then, just as you turn away, a crow lets out a warning caw from the neighbor's roof. You look back at your sash, then up at the sky. Clouds are moving in, fast. Laundry gods, be merciful. You stand motionless for a moment, eyes fixed on the incoming clouds. They're low and lazy, too gray to be innocent, too fast to be polite. Rain isn't guaranteed, but you know how this goes. Edo weather doesn't make appointments. It just shows up uninvited. With speed you didn't know your laundry-wrung limbs could summon, you rush to adjust the drying lines. The obi must stay dry. If it absorbs moisture now, it'll lose its fold shape, and you'll have to start the whole cursed ritual over. Again. You swing the rack under the eaves and wedge a bamboo pole diagonally to block the wind. It's not elegant, but necessity overrules grace. Somewhere, your ancestors groan softly at your architectural choices. With the sash protected for now, you turn your attention to the real wildcard of the day, the ceremonial sword robe. It lies folded beside the basin, already less fragrant than it was an hour ago, but just as terrifying. This robe is no common outerwear. Woven from a blend of silk and hemp, dyed with persimmon tannin and faintly shimmering like the back of a koi fish, it carries meaning. You wore this to your cousin's naming ceremony, to your mentor's memorial, to that festival where you might have drunkenly challenged a mask vendor to a poetry duel. And while you may not remember all the details, the robe certainly does. You unfold it carefully, releasing a soft sigh of starch and nostalgia. The sleeves are long and lined, meant to ripple when you walk and drape with intent during any bowing situation. The interior seams are delicate, too delicate for vigorous scrubbing. So you take the gentler route, pressing a damp cloth along each crease, applying steady pressure like a massage therapist for emotional silk. It's a strange intimacy, handling something you've worn through so many life moments. As you clean, you notice a faint mark near the lower hem. At first, you think it's a stain, but no, it's stitching. Tiny, faint, barely there, someone's kanji half erased by time. You squint. It's not yours, not your family's. Historians still argue whether hidden embroidery in formal robes was a secret lover's token, a tailor's signature, or some forgotten ritual of protection. One theory even claims they were silent duels, one samurai slipping a symbol into another's robe before a duel, like a thread-woven mic drop. Whatever the case, this kanji, perhaps a name, perhaps a poem, adds mystery to your otherwise unglamorous day. You make a mental note to ask your aunt later, though she'll probably pretend not to know anything while sending you on errands, coincidentally near the calligraphy shop. With the robe damp cleaned, you begin the folding. This isn't like the underrobes or even the sash. This requires geometry, choreography, and about 8 more fingers than you possess. The first fold aligns the collar with the spine seam. The second folds the arms inward like resting wings. You pause to align the corners, a ritual so precise that, in some dojos, apprentices practice on newspaper before graduating to actual garments. The back panel folds next, followed by a partial roll that tucks under like a kitten's paw. The result is compact, graceful, and if you've done it right, shaped like a resting crane. You breathe just a moment. And then comes the test, lifting it without disturbing the folds. You slide your arms underneath and cradle it as though it's made of brittle autumn leaves. Step by step, you cross the courtyard to the interior rack where formal garments dry out of the public eye. You've barely placed it on the wooden rod before you hear the rustle. A sharp gust of wind rips through the alley, carrying with it the spicy scent of roasting chestnuts and disaster. You pivot, too late. Your underrobes are flapping like surrender flags. You sprint fast enough to shame your sparring form. You manage to grab one robe mid-flight and slap it back onto the rack. The others you rescue from various positions, one from a bush, one from the roof of your neighbor's shrine model, and one, oh no. One landed on the nose of the neighborhood statue of Tanuki, the trickster raccoon dog. The robe dangles from its stony snout like a mustache. You make eye contact with the old monk who maintains the statue. He raises one brow. You bow deeply. He grunts and walks away, muttering something about youth these days having no respect for sacred laundry. You return to your courtyard, slightly humbled and very out of breath. The sash is safe. The ceremonial robe remains folded. The underrobes, now reclaimed, receive a second rinse just to be sure. You glance skyward. The clouds have passed, just a false alarm. But you needed that panic, maybe. It reminds you why the folding rituals matter, why the drying lines are sacred, why an entire manual was once written about the 5 mistakes of robe care, including letting your garments socialize without you. You settle into a squat, catch your breath, and sip from a small clay cup of barley tea. It's lukewarm now, but comforting. Laundry isn't glamorous. It isn't thrilling. But in this quiet war of wrinkles and wind, you've won small victories. You raise your cup slightly to the sky, to the robe, to the folded sash, and even to the tanuki statue, still looking mildly offended. One robe at a time, one gust at a time, you survive. The worst of it is done, for now. You lean back on your heels and admire the scene, robes fluttering like sleepy ghosts, sash drying in proud solitude, and not a single laundry item in active rebellion. You'd think this was the end of the day's journey, but no. You still have to fold the sword robe properly. And folding, as it turns out, is an art more precise than any duel. You retrieve the still damp robe and set it on the long bench, which you've dusted twice already just to be sure. Folding a ceremonial robe when it's even a little damp helps set the creases. But it also means one false move, and you'll lock in a wrinkle visible from the other side of Edo. First, you smooth the sleeves. Each armhole must lie like a sleeping heron, graceful, quiet, not twitching with trapped wind. The collar folds next, sharp as a katana but soft as morning rice. You pause here. Folding isn't about geometry alone. It's about intention. Your sensei once told you, every crease is a reflection of your inner state, which is poetic until you're 3 folds in and realize you're folding anxiety into silk. You start over, deep breath, flatten, align, fold. As you move through the robe's complex layers, memories surface, images stitched not into the fabric, but into the folds of your mind. That one New Year's Eve where you wore this robe too tight and nearly passed out during calligraphy practice. The quiet funeral where your uncle whispered a blessing into your shoulder seam. The shrine festival where a child tugged on your hem thinking you were a statue. You press the cloth with steady hands, palms warm against the cool fabric. This isn't about aesthetics anymore, it's ritual. Historians still argue whether folding techniques in samurai households originated from military supply packing or from ancient courtly origami traditions. Some claim the angle of sleeve folds mirrored secret family emblems when viewed from above. Others say it was just the easiest way to keep moths confused. You finally reach the last fold, a tight tuck that conceals the inner seams and creates a compact square. You secure it with a woven cord, 1 loop, 2 loops, then knot. Not too tight. Fabric needs to breathe, even if you sometimes forget to. You carry the folded robe inside, placing it in the lacquered chest reserved for formal wear. This chest smells like cedar and dust and family pride. It holds more than cloth, it holds history. With the robe settled, you return to the courtyard just in time for the daily tea break. Not because it's scheduled, it just feels right. Like the sun agreed to pause for a moment of rice ball reflection. You retrieve a bento from the kitchen, sticky rice wrapped in bamboo leaf, 1 pickled plum, 2 slices of tamagyaki. Humble, balanced, with just enough salt to remind you that hydration is still a thing. As you sit cross-legged in the shade, your neighbor leans over the bamboo fence. She's brought pickles. Again, you thank her and she shrugs, mutters something about weak men needing strong vinegar. You raise a rice ball and salute. She laughs. Conversation flows in that odd Edo fashion, half sarcasm, half oblique references to people you both pretend not to gossip about. Someone's cousin has apparently joined a meditation cult that only eats white miso. Someone else has taken to folding their laundry with 2 assistants, which is either decadent or desperate depending on who's telling it. You nibble, sip, and glance at your drying lines. Everything's holding. Your sash catches the light like a proper elder brother, silently judging the more chaotic garments. Then you hear it, a shriek, followed by hurried sandals. A young boy from down the alley has tripped over his family's drying line and now sports an angry red sash print across his cheek. He's fine, mostly indignant. His grandmother blames modern parenting. You return to your tea. Let the world twist itself up. Your sleeves are folded, your honor is intact, and your rice hasn't picked up a single laundry fiber today. That's victory. But just as you're finishing the last bite of tamagyaki, a shadow falls across your mat. It's your cousin, the tall one with perfect posture and suspiciously immaculate socks. He's holding a scroll and a very specific kind of smirk. "You forgot," he says. "Today's the day." You blink the day for what? "Inspection," he adds, "of your robe folds." You suppress a groan so deep it could echo through a well. Of course, the quarterly family folding review you'd completely forgotten. Your cousin kneels without being invited and begins unfurling your handiwork like he's evaluating a map to buried treasure. Or worse, to family dishonor. He lifts a corner, sniffs dramatically, and mutters, slight asymmetry on the shoulder crease. You raise an eyebrow. "Your opinion," you say, sipping your now-cold tea. He grins, "Yes, and the correct one." The inspection continues. For every minor flaw he finds, you defend your choices like a seasoned politician. Eventually, he folds everything back, slightly worse than how he found it, of course, and gives a begrudging nod. "Acceptable," he says, "for a middle child." And then he's gone, leaving behind a faint trail of camellia-scented superiority. You sigh. But hey, your fold's past, the obi stands, the robe rests. The tea was technically warm when you started. That counts as peace, for now. The sun leans westward now, casting long, sleepy shadows across your courtyard like slanted brushstrokes on an old scroll. Afternoon has arrived, uninvited but unhurried, and with it comes the well-earned pause before laundry enters its final act. You retreat indoors, your steps light on the wooden floorboards, only to emerge moments later with your lacquered tea tray and a tiny bowl of rice crackers, the kind that snap softly and leave sesame seeds in your teeth for hours. You place it all on a raised platform near the edge of the drying lines. And now tea break, sacred, mandatory, deliciously unproductive. You pour yourself a cup of roasted barley tea and sit back with the solemn satisfaction of a man who has survived folding an entire wardrobe without dishonoring 3 generations. Just then, your neighbor from across the alley calls out. Mrs. Watanabe, wrapped in a vivid blue yukata with a pattern of smug-looking cranes, gestures theatrically to your drying robes. "You've overfolded your outer seams again," she shouts, half playful, half serious. You wave back with an exaggerated bow. "I humbly accept your unsolicited expertise," you reply. She snorts, "If only your sleeves were as polite." This is her ritual. Every laundry day, she finds some imaginary flaw in your technique, and every time you pretend to care. It's the neighborhood's quiet theater, performed in slippers and kimono with a chorus of fluttering garments and passive-aggressive compliments. She leans on her bamboo fence now, sipping green tea while glaring affectionately at your robe rack. Your ceremonial kimono's pleats are uneven. You glance, they're fine, maybe a little cockeyed, maybe, but you'll never admit it. To appease the gods of gossip, you step over and adjust the hem, half for optics, half to maintain your standing as the alley's most competently folding samurai. "I saw your cousin earlier," she continues, casually tossing a rice cracker to her cat. "He looked insufferably smug. I assume your robe passed inspection." "Mostly," you say. "He said it was acceptable." She laughs hard enough to spill her tea. From him, that's basically a love letter. The two of you sit in mutual tea-sipping silence for a moment, broken only by the occasional creak of bamboo poles and a faint rumble from a passing ox cart in the distance. You reach for a rice cracker just as a gust of wind rustles your drying line. Again. You freeze, everyone freezes. Mrs. Watanabe's cat freezes. But it's a false alarm. The breeze subsides. Your sash remains perfectly still, unshaken, unmoved, serene. A lesser man might weep. You just nod slightly and pretend you knew it would hold. Mrs. Watanabe raises her cup in your direction. Fortune favors the folded. You clink your cup in her direction, and folds favor the fortunate. The late afternoon sun paints everything golden now, softening the harshness of the courtyard stones and warming the lacquer on the drying rods. The air smells of wood smoke, clean cotton, and a faint hint of vinegar, the telltale signature of Edo pickling season. You hear the clack of Geta sandals, and the jingle of a tofu vendor's bell as he passes your gate, singing a tune so well-worn it might as well be part of the wind. With the tea break concluded, you stretch lazily and rise to check on the garments. The Juban robes are mostly dry now, their sleeves crisping up with that delicate stiffness that says, "I have been laundered by someone who overthinks." You fold them gently, giving each one a moment of silent appreciation. These are the everyday warriors of your wardrobe, unremarkable, reliable, occasionally patched in the underarm, but always ready. Then it's time for the drying lines to be rotated. Not just for efficiency, no, that would be too modern. This is tradition. There's a whole etiquette to how laundry lines are turned depending on the time of day, the garment type, and the wind's personality. You lift each bamboo pole and swivel it a quarter turn clockwise, just as your grandfather taught you. And then you whisper the line. Every samurai household has one, a quiet blessing said over fresh laundry to keep moths away and keep family luck stitched together. Yours goes like this: folded clean, hung with care, may no fox spirit hide in there. You murmur it softly, more out of habit than belief, but it brings a faint chill anyway. Just as you finish the rotation, your foot knocks something under the bench. A scroll? No, an old parchment pouch. You pull it out, brushing off dust and a few lazy spider webs. Inside, a sewing needle, wrapped in cloth, with a plum blossom charm tied to the middle. You squint, it's familiar. This belonged to your grandmother. She used to hide small needle bundles like this around the house. "So the spirits wouldn't forget we mend things," she'd say. You place the charm back where it was and smile. As you turn to re-enter the house, Mrs. Watnabe calls out one last time. "Don't forget to bring them in before moonrise," she says. "Night moisture makes silk sulk." You bow. As always, your unsolicited wisdom is deeply unhelpful. She waves, already heading inside to prepare dinner. And you, samurai of cloth and crease, head back to your robes with the quiet pride of one who has tamed chaos by folding it in half and smoothing it down. You return to your courtyard, which now feels less like a place of chores and more like a tiny kingdom of draped fabric, ruled by the silent law of creases and sunlight. The sash still hangs in quiet defiance of the wind, while the underrobes, folded and stacked, look like polite little monks waiting for evening prayers. But tranquility never lasts long in a samurai neighborhood. You hear it before you see it. The scraping of bamboo poles, the slap of a wet futon, and the unmistakable sound of someone arguing with physics on a roof. It's your neighbor's apprentice, again, trying to hang futon covers on the communal line that stretches across both properties. Technically, that line is fair game, but etiquette demands a brief bow, a small poem, or at least eye contact before commandeering that particular space. You step toward the fence to offer a gentle but unmistakable throat clear. The boy flinches, teetering on the roof tiles as he juggles a soaked futon, a wooden pole, and a sketchbook. You squint. He's still got that ink smudge on his cheek from yesterday. Probably hasn't washed it off because he believes it gives him artistic energy. "Careful," you call. "That pole isn't rated for your enthusiasm." He grins sheepishly and bows, sort of, more of a head tilt, really. "Just need a bit more space," he mumbles. "Master says the light's better here for sketching drying cloth." Ah yes, the woodblock master next door, infamous for sketching laundry like it's a celestial event. There are rumors one of his prints, Futon in Moonlight 6, won an award in Kyoto, allegedly because it captured the tension between dampness and desire. You glance up at the sky. The golden hour is almost here. Artists get twitchy around this time. "I won't drip on your obi," the boy adds. "Probably." You sigh, but you nod. One must make peace with art, even when it smells faintly of old futon. You move your drying racks closer to the inner wall, protecting your own garments from stray ink droplets or overly inspired gestural sketches. You even place a spare mat underneath the ceremonial robe, just in case his imagination drips. As you're adjusting the bamboo poles, you spot Mrs. Watnabe at her window, peering through a slatted fan like a judge at a robe-folding contest. "I hope that's not your apprentice," she says, her tone dipped in soy sauce and judgment. "Sadly, no," you reply. "Mine folds origami and never climbs anything taller than a stool." She snorts and retreats, though not before tossing you a knowing glance that says, "Good luck with that ink storm." You return your attention to the sky. A few clouds linger like lazy koi in a blue pond, but the light is holding. The robes now glow faintly at the edges, casting elongated shadows that twitch with every breeze. You take this opportunity to retrieve your folding fan, a gift from your aunt, printed with the family crest and a warning about posture. You wave it lazily, not because it's hot, but because it adds flair to your inspection round. First, you check the sash, still straight, still dignified. A single sunbeam kisses its edge, making it look absurdly heroic. Then the underrobes, neatly stacked, modestly folded, even the one with the patched collar. And finally, the ceremonial robe. Its pleats have settled nicely, stiffening just enough to hold form, but not so much that they'll crack like autumn leaves when moved. Everything's in place, and yet you hesitate. There's something about laundry day that feels unfinished until the neighborhood has had its say. You step out into the alley for a moment, just in time to see two older gentlemen from down the road arguing over whose drying method produces less collar fade. One swears by vertical hanging, the other insists on angled draping. They notice you and call you over. "Tell him," one says, waving a drying rod like a baton. "Your ceremonial collars, do you hang them upright or lean them westward?" You blink, depends on the robe. They groan in unison. "Diplomatic answer," the other mutters. "That's not helpful at all." They go back to bickering. You excuse yourself and return home, smiling. Some debates are eternal, like whether pickled eggplant counts as a side dish or a punishment. As you pass the courtyard gate, the apprentice on the roof yelps. His sketchbook slips. You move before you think, one hand darting out, catching the paper midair like a training reflex. You look down. The page is labeled, "Drying Sash, Heroic Form." The drawing is surprisingly good. Slightly exaggerated, but you recognize the proud tilt of your folded obi, the delicate shadow lines, even a tiny sparrow perched nearby that you hadn't noticed in real life. You look up, the boy's blushing furiously. "Keep it," he says, then scrambles back over the ridge, knocking over a bucket as he goes. You take the sketch inside and slide it behind a shelf where no one will find it. Not because you're embarrassed, well, okay, maybe a little, but mostly because it feels right to keep part of today preserved. A reminder that even mundane moments, folding, hanging, protecting your drying lines from creative young roof climbers, are worthy of being remembered. And possibly immortalized in ink. The sun has dipped just far enough to drape your courtyard in amber. Not quite evening, not quite late afternoon, just that mellow, golden in-between time where shadows soften and everything slows down. Even the wind seems to hold its breath. You're in the middle of reorganizing the stacked underrobes when your fingers brush against something odd sewn into the inner sleeve of your ceremonial kimono. A small lump, subtle, no bigger than a coin. You pause. Slowly, carefully, you pinch the fabric and tug open the seam ever so slightly. Inside, folded like a secret letter, is a tiny paper charm, browned with age and stiff at the corners. It's tied with crimson thread. No knot, just tucked through the weave as if someone wanted it hidden but not forgotten. You hold it up to the fading light. A faint kanji scrawled on one side, endurance. The ink has bled a little into the fibers as if time itself had been leaking. This wasn't made recently. This charm was sewn in years ago, maybe decades. You sit back on your heels, turning the cloth in your hands like an archaeologist who's just discovered a relic at the bottom of a rice bin. It's not uncommon, you recall. In some samurai households, charms were stitched discreetly into robes for luck, protection, or emotional comfort, especially during long journeys, duels, or festivals where social expectations were deadlier than swords. Historians still argue whether these talismans were spiritual safeguards or just symbolic placebos passed down like folk wisdom. Some say warriors believed these charms could absorb shame or grief like a sponge hidden in the sleeve. Others suggest they were messages, coded wishes from mothers, wives, or children too shy to speak their hopes aloud. You run a thumb over the stitching and wonder, who put this here? It wasn't you, and your mother always preferred her blessings verbal, usually loud, occasionally with slippers. Perhaps your grandmother, or a long-gone tailor with a flair for emotional embroidery. You think back to the last few times you wore this robe. Was there ever a moment when you felt oddly reassured, like someone else was carrying part of your worry? Maybe during that one-lantern procession, when you walked alone past the old canal and the silence wrapped around you like the echo of a lullaby. You slipped the charm back in place, not out of superstition but respect. Someone wanted this there. Someone stitched endurance into your sleeve and left it to do its quiet work year after year. As you fold the sleeve again, more carefully this time, you wonder what other secrets your garments might hold. You suddenly remember a rumor you once heard. One of those alleyway whispers traded between apprentices too tired to pretend they weren't eavesdropping. That high-ranking samurai occasionally concealed items in their sleeves. Love letters, extra coin, even tiny ink pots for last-minute poetry contests. You glance at your robe stack. What if they're all hiding something? Driven by idle curiosity and a whiff of adventure, and maybe a tiny itch of procrastination, you check the second ceremonial robe. Nothing in the sleeve, but inside the collar lining you find a rice grain. Just one pressed flat. You stare at it for a long second, then laugh softly. Probably an accident, possibly a snack. But wouldn't it be wonderful if it were intentional? A family tradition, perhaps, a hidden grain to ensure you're never hungry when you bow before your ancestors. Next, the summer robe. This one's plainer lighter, dyed in sky blue with subtle reeds near the hem. No charms here, but along the inner stitching you notice the threads change color halfway through. Blue to green. At first you assume it's a repair, but the stitching is seamless, deliberate. Was this someone's hidden signature? A tailor's quiet rebellion against uniformity? You lean back, surrounded by your slowly darkening courtyard, and a pile of garments that suddenly feel more like memoirs. Each thread might be a whisper. Each seam a memory folded and tucked away, waiting to be unfolded not with scissors or needles, but with time and attention. You begin folding them again, even more delicately this time, not out of fear but reverence, as if every crease is helping you listen better. And as you press the last sleeve into place, you hear the faint sound of temple bells in the distance, 7 chimes, echoing off tiled roofs and fluttering prayer flags. That's when you realize the whole neighborhood is starting to transition. Mrs. Watanabe has pulled her laundry in. You see her silhouette through shoji paper as she folds with military precision and likely judges you through osmosis. The tofu vendor has packed up, his bell no longer ringing but resting in his palm as he walks. Even the apprentice has vanished from the roof, leaving behind only a damp sketchbook page clipped to the clothesline with a twig. The air has cooled, carrying the scent of cedar smoke and steamed dumplings from someone's evening pot. You gather your robes into a neat bundle and move them indoors. One by one, you place them back into the cedar chest, each robe layered like a season, the folds aligned like verses in a poem. But before closing the lid, you tuck something else into the ceremonial sleeve. Not a charm, not a letter, just a tiny paper slip, blank. You don't know why, but maybe someday someone will find it and wonder. And isn't that reason enough? Just as you close the lid of the cedar chest, you hear a soft knock at the front gate, a hesitant tock-tock, like someone unsure if they've arrived at the right home or are interrupting a deeply important robe-folding ceremony. You pad over in your house slippers and slide the gate slightly ajar. Standing there is a boy no older than 10, holding a wooden tray with a cloth bundle atop it, and looking like he's trying very hard to balance both politeness and sheer terror. "Message from the shrine master," he says, bowing so low his tray wobbles dangerously. You accept the bundle with both hands, nodding with the gravity this moment clearly demands. He bows again, turns, and sprints off into the sunset like a tiny courier delivering plot twists. You unroll the cloth. Inside is a carefully folded white garment, shrine ceremonial garb, and a note. "Please help prepare this for tomorrow's rites. No pressure, but also all the pressure." Classic shrine master. His handwriting is always suspiciously elegant, even when making impossible requests at the last minute. You sigh deeply, but you're also flattered. Being asked to fold shrine garments is no small thing. It means someone trusts your ability to align sacred sleeves and spiritual pleats without inadvertently summoning a ghost or upsetting an ancestral spirit. You set up your folding area again. The courtyard is quieter now, touched only by the rustle of the wind through reeds and the low, content hum of neighborhood cooking fires. This robe is different, pure white, starched almost rigid, embroidered with silver thread along the hem that gleams like frost. You handle it like it might shatter from the wrong breath. First, you inspect it. No loose threads, no stains, only the faintest scent of camphor and ceremonial incense. Then you stretch it flat, smoothing the fabric with your palms until it lies still. A ripple of cool silk under your fingers. You begin folding, slowly, reverently. Unlike your household robes, this one demands symmetry beyond aesthetics. The shrine robe must reflect cosmic balance, each crease a metaphor for the world's harmony, at least according to the folding scroll from the temple's archives, which you once skimmed and promptly forgot under pressure. So you invent your own rhythm. Fold the left sleeve first, the past. Fold the right, the future. Bring the hem toward the collar, the meeting of earth and sky. You smile faintly. Even if it's not what the scroll said, it feels right. As you adjust the inner pleat, you notice something sewn into the neckline, tiny, almost invisible. A stitched emblem. Not of the shrine, not any clan you know, it's a flower. A chrysanthemum, no, too narrow, a bellflower. You blink. That was your mother's crest before she married into your father's house. You lean closer. Could this have been her robe? Memories flash of her tending the house altar, her fingers folded in prayer, her voice quiet but steady. Maybe this was once hers. Maybe the shrine master had been holding on to it. Maybe he knew. Or maybe it's just coincidence. A reused garment. Bellflowers are popular. But your fingers slow anyway, each crease more careful, more delicate. You finish folding it into a perfect square, bound with a cord of red and white silk. You place it gently inside a lidded bamboo box, ready for the temple runners to collect at dawn. As you wash your hands in the basin, another tradition for spiritual cleanliness, you glance at your drying lines. One robe remains outside, not sacred, just a futon cover you forgot earlier hanging limply like an afterthought. You walk over to retrieve it, and as you do, you hear footsteps. Turning, you see the shrine master himself at the gate. He's rarely seen outside of temple grounds, and when he is, he moves like smoke in formal sandals. He raises a hand in greeting, then nods at the bamboo box. You folded it with care, he says. The robe is heavier than it looks. You nod back. It carries more than fabric. He pauses, as if weighing something in the air. That robe belonged to your mother, he finally says. She used it the last time she led the spring rites. I thought it should be worn again. Your breath catches slightly, but you say nothing, only bow. He returns the gesture, then adds with a wry smile, your folding's improved. Your obi used to look like a twisted eel. You stifle a laugh, still does on bad mornings. With a final nod, he picks up the box and turns, his silhouette fading into the dusk like an ink stroke on parchment. You stand there a moment longer, hand resting on the futon cover, listening to the temple bell ring once in the distance. A soft, low note that seems to wrap around the rooftops and settle in your bones. Then slowly you fold the cover, nothing sacred, no hidden meanings, just cotton and routine and the faint smell of rice starch and pine. But still with care, because you never really know which robe holds history, or when a fold becomes a memory. You set the futon cover aside and give your hands a quick rinse in the courtyard basin. The water has cooled now, tracing goosebumps along your fingers as the last edge of sunlight disappears behind the tiled roofs. Evening is here, not dramatically, not all at once, but quietly the way a cat sneaks into a warm room and curls up without asking. Now it's time for one of the lesser celebrated arts of the Edo household, heatless ironing. Or more accurately, convincing your robes to lie flat without ever applying heat, weight, or common sense. You fetch your stretching board, a smooth plank of cypress about shoulder width, passed down from your grandfather. Allegedly, it was once part of an ox cart. More likely, it was salvaged from someone's collapsed bathhouse. Still, it served your family for years, and it holds the ghost of every garment it's helped shape. Your tools are humble but precise. Small polished river stones, lengths of thin bamboo, and 2 silken cords for tensioning sleeves. You lay a slightly damp juban across the board and begin your ritual, adjusting seams, smoothing wrinkles, weighing edges with just enough pressure to suggest obedience, not force it. The cloth stretches slowly under your hands, giving up its folds like a stubborn dog accepting a belly rub. There's a strange peace in this process. No rushing, no pulling, just slow, rhythmic coaxing. As you lean forward, one of the stones slips and clinks off the board. You catch it midair with a flourish. A move your neighbor might call theatrical, but you know the truth. If it had hit the robe, you'd be repeating the entire rinse cycle. Again. Historians still argue whether this style of tension-stretching robes originated in Edo or came earlier, perhaps from high-end courtiers trying to press their silk with cherrywood rods. Some claim it was inspired by the fishing nets used in the inland sea. Lines stretched taut, knots as elegant as poetry. Others say it evolved from necessity. With fire bans in wooden cities, hot irons were disasters waiting to happen. You place another weight at the hem and step back. The robe is flattening nicely now, catching the lantern glow in just the right way. It almost looks new. Almost. Then comes the most delicate maneuver of the evening, the bamboo pole insertion. No, it's not as exciting as it sounds. You select a slender pole, slide it gently through the sleeve tunnel of your outer robe, and hang it over the raised, drying frame. The idea is to prevent sleeve collapse during air drying, because once the creases set in wrong, they require a level of social bravery you simply do not possess to wear them in public. You check the line angle, align the robe's spine seam with the bamboo rail, and adjust one corner by the width of a grain of rice. Perfect. Then you pause. Not out of fatigue, but appreciation. For the first time today, everything is where it's supposed to be. No flapping hems, no judgmental cats, no sudden gusts or surprise assignments or sacred garments bearing secret messages. Just robes, quiet drying. The air smells like cedar and rice starch, with a faint trace of plum vinegar from Mrs. Watanabe's fermenting jars. You hear the thrum of a biwa from somewhere nearby, a neighbor's student probably, but the notes are soft and spaced far apart. A sleepy sort of tune that echoes through the alley like a yawn. You go back inside briefly and return with your final folding task of the evening, the scarf you wear on shrine days. It's a humble thing, dyed indigo with a faded tassel, woven by your cousin during her brief, artisanal weaving phase. It's not beautiful, but it's yours, and somehow it always smells faintly of roasted chestnuts. You fold it slowly, almost absent-mindedly. 2 turns, then a tuck, a flick at the edge to keep it from unraveling, and a soft press in the center like a heartbeat. You sit beside it on the engawa, feet dangling just above the garden stones. The sky has gone purple-blue now, the moon a soft disk rising over the neighbor's roofline like a rice cracker on a lacquer plate. The wind is softer, gentler, and for a moment you think back to childhood, to when you first learned to fold a robe, your aunt guiding your hands, your uncle barking out unnecessary metaphors. "Fold it like a scroll," he'd shout. "No, not that scroll, the good kind, the one with the gold leaf and the sea monster illustrations." You laughed so hard you dropped the robe into the koi pond. You smile now, watching a small moth flutter lazily around the lantern light. The moth, too, knows that this is a house of clean lines and calm evenings. It flutters once more, then rests on your sleeve as if to approve your efforts. You brush it off gently, no hard feelings. The final step of your heatless ironing comes not from cloth, but from time. You leave the garments to rest overnight. The air will finish the job, just as it always has, just as it always will. You rise, stretch, and cast one last look at your courtyard. A soft exhale escapes your lips. You did it. No wrinkles, no disasters, and only one unsolicited critique from Mrs. Watanabe. You're practically a master. Night has officially taken over, slipping its dark sleeve across the rooftops and soaking the alleyways in a quiet hush. Your courtyard glows in the warm radius of one paper lantern, swaying slightly from the hook by the eaves. Moths spiral lazily around its light. Now comes the final ritual of the day, the evening lantern check and the robe rotation. Not everyone in Edo takes it this seriously. In fact, you're pretty sure your cousin thinks you're mildly deranged for performing a garment rotation as if auditioning for a no play. But in your house, this isn't just tradition. It's preventative maintenance with a spiritual flair. You begin with the outer robe rack, where the ceremonial kimono, now dry, rests like a napping elder. You touch the fabric gently, testing the stiffness at the hem. Perfect. Just enough starch to hold the form, not so much that it rustles with every breath. You rotate the robe a quarter turn, letting the inner panels cool evenly under the night air. The motion is deliberate, smooth, even reverent. You whisper a line under your breath. Folds lie flat, night flows past. It's a family phrase, part lullaby, part reminder to avoid mildew. You move on to the sash. It too is dry now, its folds crisp and regal, hanging like a scroll waiting to be unrolled. You untie the twine gently, let the fabric breathe, then fold it again, this time for storage. A shorter fold meant for drawers rather than shoulders, each motion precise, each breath steady. And just as you reach the final pleat, something flickers at the edge of your vision. A shadow, fast and soundless. You freeze. Then chirp, a soft flutter, just a bird, probably one of the sparrows nesting in Mrs. Watanabe's tangled wisteria. Still, it's a reminder that the night has its own rules, its own schedule. You finish the fold and place the sash inside its storage sleeve, a fabric envelope dyed deep blue and embroidered with 3 tiny squares to represent your household: sky, wind, and folded cloth. Now to check the sleeves. There's an entire scroll in your house titled The 8 Positions of Resting Robe Sleeves, written in florid cursive by your grandfather after he got snowed in one winter, and took it as a divine sign to lecture the future. Tonight you go with waning moon, a gentle curve, overlapping folds at the elbow seam with the ends fanned just slightly. It's supposed to bring clarity, or at the very least, less static cling in the morning. Historians still argue whether these sleeve position names were practical innovations or just another excuse for aristocrats to name things elaborately. One Edo-period scholar wrote that sleeve positioning was the most competitive sport among housewives during plum season. Another claimed it began with actors in kabuki dressing rooms who refused to fold anything unless it looked like a swan. You fluff one sleeve slightly, checking for dust, and that's when you notice something odd. There's a faint line pressed into the shoulder, barely visible, a whisper of a fold that shouldn't be there, a rogue crease. You sigh like a man who has just been asked to climb Mt. Fuji with a laundry basket. Gently you unroll the robe, flatten the crease between 2 cedar slats and apply the pebble press. 10 minutes should fix it, maybe 15. While you wait, you begin reciting the household folding scroll aloud, as is custom in your family when finishing the day's laundry. Fold with care, for sleep is near. Folds like waves, smooth and clear. What's been worn returns to rest. Seams aligned and corners blessed. Halfway through the second verse, you hear soft footsteps at your gate. Not hurried, not intruding, just the telltale shuffle of straw sandals against stone. You peer out. It's Mrs. Watanabe again, holding a small tray, covered. "I brought roasted sweet potato," she says, not unkindly. "I made too much, and you looked like you hadn't eaten anything that wasn't rice-flavored starch today." You bow deeply. "You're too kind." "I'm not," she says, "but if I don't give it to you, you'll end up eating pickled plum and calling it dessert again." You accept the tray and remove the cloth. 2 golden roasted slices, steam curling like incense from their split skins. The smell is heavenly, sweet, earthy with a hint of char. You offer her a seat on the bench, and she takes it without hesitation. For a moment, the two of you sit in silence, munching slowly as the lantern light flickers and a breeze nudges the drying lines like a whisper. "Your folds look good tonight," she says between bites. You raise an eyebrow, sincere compliment or midnight sarcasm. She shrugs, "Both. Can't let you get too confident." She finishes her piece, sets the tray aside, and rises. "Remember," she says as she walks toward the gate, "rotate your robes again before sunrise, or the wind spirits will knot your sleeves out of spite." You grin, "Noted." And just like that, she's gone. You glance down at your garments, their shadows stretched across the courtyard like resting silhouettes. One last rotation before bed, one more nod to tradition, one more gentle press on the seam of a day well spent. With the roasted sweet potato warming your belly and Mrs. Watanabe's warning still echoing in your mind, you rise from the bench and dust off your hands. The robes will stay put for the night, so long as you perform the ritual known only to the laundry-weary, the final tabi sock inspection. You step back inside and retrieve the small bamboo basket tucked under your bedding platform. Inside lies a collection of well-worn tabi, those split-toe socks that all proper samurai wear while pretending not to have cold feet about anything. You dump the socks out with a muted flump on your folding mat. Some are pristine, some are questionable, and a few are clearly veterans of more than one embarrassing shrine visit. You pick up the worst offender first, an off-white pair with a loose seam and a stain that might be ink or soy sauce or just generational trauma. Time for darning. You light a fresh lamp, grab your needle roll, and settle in cross-legged like a monk about to transcribe ancient scrolls. You thread the needle, guiding it slowly through the fabric. Your aunt taught you this long ago after you stepped on a pine cone and discovered the true importance of sock integrity. You stitch slowly, deliberately, over, under, loop, and pull. The rhythm is oddly meditative, like embroidery's less glamorous cousin. You murmur to yourself, one stitch for strength, one for style, one for avoiding shrine shame. Historians still argue whether tabi darning was a domestic duty relegated to women or a subtle symbol of household harmony shared by all. Some sources insist skilled samurai used it to practice precision. Others say socks were sent to local menders, along with strong tea and a list of complaints. Your stitches tighten, crisscrossing in a grid that looks not entirely unlike a tiny battlefield. A small one, perhaps fought by ants or very opinionated ghosts. You set the repaired pair aside and move on to the next, the lucky socks. They've got a slightly mismatched tone and a tiny dragon embroidered at the heel, added during your cousin's embroidery spree when she declared that everyone's feet needed more mysticism. You don't wear these often. They're for special days, family meetings, shrine festivals, or whenever you suspect a marriage proposal might be whispered at the Plum Blossom Fair. You check the seams, still strong, just a few fraying threads near the toe, a quick reinforcement and they'll last another season. Your fingers move faster now, warmed by routine and repetition. The darning becomes less about fixing holes and more about caring for history. You realize how much these small things matter, not just to preserve the sock, but to preserve the rhythm of life itself. You hear the sound of wood being chopped in the distance, probably someone prepping the bathhouse fire. A dog barks twice, then nothing. The world softens. As you tie off the final thread and bite it loose, you glance over at the cedar chest where the robes now sleep. Each garment folded, aligned, rotated, blessed, and quietly judged. And here you are, patching socks in the lamplight like it's the most natural thing in the world. You reach for one last pair, the formal Shrine Day socks. White, spotless, terrifying, you inspect them like a merchant inspecting coins for counterfeits. No flaws, which is in itself suspicious. You squint. Are they too perfect? Have they been tampered with? You sniff them. They smell of rice starch and cold resolve. You fold them back neatly and tuck them into their silk pouch. You'll deal with their silent superiority tomorrow. With your mending done, you reach for your wrapping cloth and carefully roll the finished socks together, tying the bundle with a twine bow that holds just firm enough to feel ceremonial. You place the bundle on your windowsill, where the moonlight can gently bless it with whatever sock-specific spiritual energy exists. And now, one last ritual. You pull out your ink brush and take down the folding ledger. Yes, your family keeps one. It's less a logbook and more a gentle guilt trip in parchment form. You flip to today's page. The ink is faded. The brush crackles as it touches the paper. You write. Today, 6 robes washed, 1 ceremonial sash folded twice, 3 socks mended, 1 charm rediscovered, moon in waxing quarter, spirits friendly, wind mischievous. You set the ledger aside, satisfied. You could have just said laundry complete, but where's the romance in that? You hear a tiny meow at the door. The neighbor's cat has returned. It steps inside as if it owns the place, hops onto your mat, and curls into a tight ball beside your feet. You consider protesting but decide against it. The cat has excellent taste in drying environments. You lean back on your elbows, staring at the ceiling beams. The lantern light flickers, catching the tiny threads in your sleeves, the neat bundles of socks, the still glinting embroidery on your storage pouch. Everything is calm, balanced, tucked in. Tomorrow there will be new folds, new spills, new wind. But tonight the robes lie flat, the socks are whole, and even the cat approves. You wake the next morning to the faint clink of the neighborhood well's pulley chain and the smell of someone over-toasting sesame seeds. Your bones creak as you stretch, but there's something satisfying about it. You earned that soreness. You folded honorably yesterday. But peace, like a freshly ironed sleeve, never lasts. The first hint of trouble arrives in the form of a knock at the back gate. Not the polite kind, but the quick, urgent trouble is brewing kind. It's your neighbor's nephew, the one who's always slightly damp and smells faintly of pickled turnip. He's holding an empty soap pouch. His eyes are wide, his forehead glistens. "She used the last of the plum vinegar soap," he whispers, like he's confessing a crime against the gods. "You blink, who?" "My sister for her hair." You don't respond right away. This is delicate. Plum vinegar soap is rare, strong, and sacred, at least to people who care about robe hygiene. It's the one substance that gets indigo out of underrobes without bleaching the sole from the fabric. And it was your turn to use it today. He continues, nervously twisting the empty pouch. "There might be a little left in the corner." You close your eyes, count to 7, open them again. "Take me to the basin." You follow him around the back of their house to the shared water area. The soap pouch lies beside a basin, clearly wrung within an inch of its life. His sister is nowhere to be seen, presumably hiding behind a curtain of shame. You lift the pouch. One sniff confirms it. Gone. The citrusy vinegar tang has been replaced by something floral and disturbingly fruity. You sigh and straighten up, aware of the tension in the air. The nephew looks up, expecting a lecture, possibly a duel. Instead, you say, "Do you have any fermented persimmon paste?" He blinks, yes. "Get it." He runs off. When he returns, you mix the paste with warm water and add a pinch of rice husk ash for good measure. It's not perfect. It won't win any laundry awards, but it'll get you through the day. You mutter as you stir, "Desperation, the mother of invention and slightly sticky robes." Historians still argue whether Edo soap alternatives like persimmon paste and rice ash blends were widespread knowledge or closely guarded family secrets. Some documents mention competitive housewives hosting soap-off competitions during the rainy season. Others hint at underground markets trading dried yuzu rinds like contraband. The mixture foams a little, which you take as a good omen. You thank the nephew with a curt nod, and he bows 3 times before vanishing with the speed of someone who narrowly avoided a sock-based scolding. Back in your courtyard, you face the last of your underrobes, one that's been through a lot. The collar is frayed. The sleeves are threadbare, but it's familiar, like a stubborn old friend who still shows up for morning tea. You dip the cloth in the makeshift soap and begin scrubbing, slowly, lovingly, knowing full well it's not going to be perfect. But maybe it doesn't need to be. Maybe robes, like people, earn their character in the creases. A sparrow lands on the edge of the basin and eyes your lather with interest. You flick a drop of foam in its direction. It chirps indignantly and hops away. You scrub and rinse, scrub and rinse. The robe sighs under your hands, releasing its stories, its old arguments, its festival sweat and temple incense. Once finished, you wring it out and hang it on the shortest rack. No special treatment, just sun, wind, and time. You're about to return inside when you hear a rustle near the drying lines. A second figure has entered the scene. Mrs. Watnabe herself, holding what appears to be a tiny lacquer box and a suspiciously neutral expression. She holds it out. "Plum vinegar soap, a spare. I keep it for emergencies." You accept it slowly, eyes narrowing. "Why didn't you say anything earlier?" She shrugs. "I wanted to see how you'd handle adversity. Consider it neighborly evaluation." You open the box. It's full, pristine, smells divine. "You're a terrifying woman," you say. She bows, "And you're decent with a soap crisis. Maybe next year I'll let you borrow my wind scroll." You almost drop the box. You have the wind folding scroll. "Oh yes, the original, written on eel skin." "That's not traditional." "Exactly." She turns and strolls away, robes billowing like she just delivered an epic plot twist in a historical drama. You look down at the soap box, then up at the robe you just washed. You debate rewashing it just to experience the joy of plum vinegar clarity. But no, let it be. Some robes are meant to carry their flaws proudly. You close the soap box gently, place it on the shelf with ceremonial care, and whisper a silent vow to never run out again. Laundry, you realize, isn't just a battle against dirt. It's a negotiation with family, neighbors, weather, and the unpredictable tide of vinegar supplies. And today, you won. The afternoon has mellowed into that velvety golden hour, the kind that makes even laundry look majestic. Shadows stretch long and soft across your courtyard, and your ceremonial gear waits patiently on the platform, ready for its final folding. Not just any folding, though. This is the big one. The formal wear for tomorrow's lantern festival. The robe. The outer sash. The silk over-jacket with the ridiculous crane pattern that you once swore you'd never wear again after tripping over it during your cousin's engagement dinner. But here it is, calling you, daring you. You light a stick of temple incense, not for spirits, not even for luck, just for the smell. That woody calm fills the courtyard, making it feel like you're preparing a stage rather than a laundry space. You lay out the ceremonial robe first, deep indigo with embroidered wave patterns, subtly dyed to shimmer under lantern light. The fabric is cool and dense under your fingers. It demands respect. You begin with the collar alignment. Pull gently, rotate the fabric just so. The sleeves follow wide and long, meant for dramatic turns and elegant temple bows. The underlayer is lighter, a pale silk with a silver cloud print. You fold it next, fingers slipping between the layers like a tea master arranging cups. The outer sash, long and finicky, is next. It's embroidered with family crest motifs, and if you fold it wrong, they end up sideways, which has happened once before. You're still emotionally recovering. You concentrate. The embroidery must align dead center. You flatten it carefully, exhaling slowly, then fold the fabric into crisp lines that suggest you definitely didn't just consult your cousin's folding reference scroll 5 minutes ago. Then comes the jacket. Ah yes, the infamous overcoat with the crane design. It's white silk embroidered with cranes mid-flight. Very regal, very traditional, very difficult to fold without looking like you've murdered a bird mid-glide. You place it on the mat and start with the wings, sleeves. One in then the other, feather tips just grazing the hem. The collar folds inward, forming a soft V, and the bottom tucks up like a resting heron. You smile, it actually looks good, maybe even graceful. The cranes look like they're sleeping instead of collapsing. Historians still argue whether the festival overcoats with animal embroidery had symbolic meanings or were simply the result of fashion rivalry between noble houses. Some claim the crane represented long life and luck. Others suggest it was meant to shame bachelors into marrying before their sleeves aged faster than their prospects. You complete the fold with a light press, wrap the robe stack in its protective cloth, and bind it with a crimson ribbon. Not for decoration, just to hold the shape, but it does look nice. You place the stack into the lacquered garment box, black with gold inlay, shaped to fit the formal wear with barely a millimeter to spare. A gift from your uncle, who always said, "A good robe box says you're serious about your folds and your feelings." You close the lid slowly, feeling the resistance of the air as it seals. Done. You pause, looking at the empty mat. That strange combination of relief and quiet melancholy creeps in. Folding is done. For today, anyway. The robes are ready. You're ready. And yet, there's a little part of you that misses the ritual already. You pour yourself a cup of barley tea, still warm from the kettle. Sip slowly. Then you hear it, footsteps outside the gate. Lighter than yesterday's, quicker, you know them well. It's your younger cousin. He pops his head through the gate like a cat testing the room's temperature. "You finished?" he asks. You nod, "Just now." "Good," he says, stepping in. "Because I forgot to fold mine and I need your help, also your folding mat, and your steady hands, and possibly your soul." You laugh, "I'll need payment in roasted chestnuts or social credit." "Done, I'll write you a thank you haiku on real washi paper." And just like that, you're back on the mat, folding his robes this time. Less ceremonial, more chaotic. He folds like someone in a hurry to catch a fish. You gently correct him, guiding his sleeves, realigning his folds, until eventually, his robe stack begins to look less like a wrinkled pastry and more like something one could wear in front of a shrine priest without causing concern. "Thanks," he says, bowing. "I'd say I owe you one, but we both know you're keeping score." "I am, there's a ledger." He bows again and vanishes, leaving behind the faintest smell of sesame oil and sibling energy. You chuckle, gather the remaining cloth scraps, and begin to sweep the mat. Clean, folded, complete. But before you go inside, you take a final stroll around the courtyard. The robes have been packed, the socks are nestled, the sash is wrapped like a scroll of poetry. Even the stubborn crane jacket looks regal. You nod to yourself, then to the moon just peeking over the rooftops. You're ready for the festival, for tomorrow, for whatever unfolds next. You step back into your home, sliding the shoji screen shut with the quiet satisfaction of someone who's just folded their entire life into neat, symmetrical rectangles. Outside, the night thickens. Lanterns from nearby homes blink into existence one by one, like fireflies obeying some unspoken neighborhood agreement. But there's one last task to complete. You return to the courtyard to check on the air, cool, still, but not too damp. The perfect moment for final storage, and for the last remaining ritual of the laundry day. You retrieve the incense scroll, the short one kept in the wooden tube beside the cedar chest. This scroll doesn't explain technique or provide diagrams. It simply holds a blessing written generations ago by a great-grandmother with impeccable folds and even sharper handwriting. You unroll the scroll, set it gently across the top of the storage chest, and light a final cone of sandalwood incense. The smoke curls upward like a lazy ghost, spiraling over the sealed garment box before dissipating into the rafters. As the scent settles into the air, you whisper the words aloud, just as they were meant to be spoken. From fold to form, from cloth to calm. May these threads not fray. May sleep hold strong. It's not fancy, not poetic, but it does the job. You extinguish the incense, return the scroll to its tube, and close the chest with a soft click. The finality is comforting. Everything is in its place. Even the chaotic cousin's robe, though you tucked it into a side shelf with a slightly judgmental note pinned to it. You blow out the lantern, leaving just the moonlight to bathe the courtyard. Shadows from the drying poles stretch like sleepy guards across the stones. The apprentice's forgotten sketch still flutters in the breeze, clipped to the fence with that same stubborn twig. You consider removing it, but something about it feels earned, so you let it stay. The silence is total now, not the empty kind, but the full kind, like the house itself is exhaling, satisfied. The robes have been cared for, the rituals followed, the sleeves rotated. Even the ghost of your aunt would have trouble finding fault tonight. And then you do what you always do at the end of laundry day. You kneel at the edge of the mat, open your sleeve, and pull out your house's folding token, a small square of embroidered fabric passed from eldest to eldest. You touch it to your forehead, then place it gently atop the cedar chest. It's not necessary. No one would notice if you skipped it. But you do it anyway, because sometimes meaning isn't in the big gestures, it's in the small ones. The ones folded into the day like a sleeve that holds its shape long after you've taken the robe off. You bow to the chest. You bow to the mat. And finally, you bow to the sky. You retreat inside, barefoot now, the floorboards cool against your soles. You move slowly, letting your muscles unwind with every step. The smell of sandalwood lingers faintly, curling into the corners of the room like a lullaby. Outside, the night continues its quiet pacing. A bamboo wind chime taps gently in the distance, its notes spaced out like a sleepy conversation. You pour the last of the barley tea into a small ceramic cup. It's barely warm, but it tastes of endings, and that, in this moment, is perfect. You sit by the window, watching moonlight slide across the folded sleeves resting on your chest. Everything is still. Everything is soft. Even the air feels folded tonight. You let your eyes drift across the patterns in the tatami. You trace the seams with your gaze the way you once traced stitches as a child, lying beside your grandmother as she darned your first socks. You remember her saying, "Stitches hold the world together, one thread at a time." You feel your breath slow. You feel your shoulders drop. The robe of the day slips from your mind. There's no need to move now. No need to think about tomorrow's garments, or the errands waiting in the alley, or which robe will earn passive-aggressive praise next week. Tonight your world is folded, neatly, quietly, lovingly. Let it stay that way. Let the sleeves rest. Let the sash sleep. Let the silence wrap around you like soft cotton pulled from the line just before dusk. And when the dreams come, let them be gentle.